And I can introduce Eva, but I want to allow them to introduce themselves um, and kind of welcome you into the space. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll hand it over to you, but we're here at any point if you want to bounce anything else off us and or field questions from people.
Okay, great. So hello everybody. My name is Aoife Hammond. I am based in County Clare in Ireland, in the west of Ireland. I work in um quite a rural area called Kilfenora in North Clare. Um, I guess my work for probably the last nearly 20 years is working in solidarity with communities in and around queer organising, migrant rights and asylum seeker rights in Ireland, and issues with kind of housing and queer community organising as well. Um, for the past 3 years, I've been working in an organisation called Common Knowledge, and that's kind of what has led me to T. We had Alicia with us a couple of months ago, and it was really brilliant to hear more about your work. But actually, um, I've been following on you for years anyway, so I was really delighted to link in. I was really interested in doing your course a couple of years ago, but kind of life got in the way. So this is a brilliant opportunity. Um, I have prepared a little bit about what we do in Common Knowledge and also the Queer Sheds project. Um, if that's something that we might do.
Absolutely, would
Yeah.
100% love that.
Okay, great. And then I guess that can kind of open the space up a little bit in terms of what we can talk about. So I'm going to attempt to share this, right? Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Um, okay, so how are we doing with that?
Perfect.
We got it. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about organising queer community in rural Ireland. Our work isn't just limited to rural Ireland, but it's a lot of what we do, and it's kind of how we started out these projects. And kind of to position that, I can talk about Common Knowledge. So Common Knowledge is the organisation I work with. I run the community projects here from, so that kind of spans everything from our kind of queer skill sharing project to our cultural biodiversity and sort of land related community projects as well. So we're a not-for-profit social enterprise. We're community owned and purchased. Um, and it's our aim to support people and communities to live more sustainably. So we do that with a skill sharing program. We've got our community program, which is mostly what I run. And then we have a 50-acre site in North Clare, and that was purchased with community bonds 3 years ago. And we're a not-for-profit social enterprise, and that's how that was bought. So on that site, we run workshops and skill sharing throughout the year. We've also got a regenerative land project that we're working with there, and I can just tell you a little bit about the land that we have. So it's a 50-acre site. You can see it here. We have a little bit of an oasis here in the center of what we have all around there is what you can see in the background is Sitka spruce plantation. Sitka spruce is a huge issue. It's forestry in Ireland, and it covers a huge amount of rural Ireland. There's huge issues with Sitka spruce. It's really good. It can be, it's a beautiful tree and it's beautiful in the area that it's meant to be, but in Ireland it just doesn't work. It's a crop that basically it destroys the land, destroys rivers, and it has huge impact in terms of what's happening now with climate change. Climate change, the trees are being pulled down all the time because they're shallow rooted in bogs, so it causes landslides. It has huge issues. So we're completely surrounded by this. But the people who took on the land before we did created this amazing oasis, and we've got kind of cut over blanket bog, marshy fields, bog, woodlands, and we use this space as kind of an outdoor education centre. Um, and some of the work that I kind of do there is, we've got hands-on kind of climate action and biodiversity education, running programs for the local community in learning how to manage the land regeneratively. We have a kind of a large-scale permaculture plan that we're working to. We've also got a career sheds project, which is primarily kind of land and traditional skills-based workshops. And then I also run a kind of heritage and traditional skills program as well that focuses on traditional culture and skill sharing from Ireland and from all over. So that kind of culminates in a festival that we do once a year, which is focused on people sharing the skills that they have, no matter where they're from, and also kind of traditional music, dancing, crafts. So that's kind of where we come from, and that's my work here with Common Knowledge. And then I can kind of go on to what that kind of what's come from that. That's kind of brought me into meeting ye. So we have a program called the Queer Sheds, and it's basically based on the kind of men's and women's sheds models that are really, I don't know, is that a thing in your neck of the woods, the men's sheds and the
Very
women's
much so.
sheds?
Yeah, typically in so-called Australia, we've got a lot of men's sheds and a
Yeah,
lot of rural women's associations.
yeah. So that's the kind of basis that we took our Career Sheds project, basically bringing people together in rural Ireland where there's not a lot of connection for people sometimes or activity. Um, and there hasn't, there really isn't a lot of open queer spaces, especially not alternative queer spaces for people. So we started doing this work with the queer community in around 2022. We brought 25 queer people from basically every different background in Ireland, spent a week looking at the kind of intersection between um, what the resilience that our queer community has developed and looking at how to channel that into creating some kind of super simple climate action kind of workbook. But we brought people down on site for 5 days. And, there was people that were just teenagers, well into their 70s, people that were in homeless accommodation, people who were settled. It kind of spanned a range of people, and bringing people together for that week in a rural setting and doing workshops where people connected to the land, where they planted seeds, where they talked about their experiences. Something really special happened, and it kind of, for me, I was facilitating it. I wasn't taking part in it, but it was something that was really special for me. I moved to rural Ireland maybe 2 years before that, and had come from a very vibrant queer community in the city. Um, and I was really missing that connection, but I was also really enjoying being in rural Ireland. So I guess I had never kind of experienced that type of connection before, spending time with queer people out in nature. And that was something that was really special. So myself and Fionn, the person who is the co-founder of Common Knowledge, said, this is really special. We want to keep working with that. And from then came this Queer Sheds project. So we set up basically we applied for a little bit of funding to be able to run a Career Sheds project where we said, look, we'll do 6 workshops. We'll invite people from the local community and we'll ask them what type of skill sharing they'd like to do. So this is basically what turned into our Career Sheds project. So what we do is we run kind of practical and land-based and traditional skill sharing workshops, meetups and mehels, um, basically kind of once a month. And it's self-organized within the community. Um, it really is kind of, we have a whole intersection in terms of the types of people that come to the workshops. I think a connector really is that people want to do something that is with other queer people, but also outside of the norms of what we know now as kind of queer spaces, away from the kind of rainbow capitalism. And these are brilliant spaces, by the way. I think queer spaces are not rainbow capitalism, but queer spaces are really important. And those types of pride spaces in rural Ireland are really good. But sometimes those types of spaces are not everything that you need, especially if you're interested in a different type of connection with people and you're interested in a different type of connection with the land. So though we're trying to create a space similar to yourselves, I guess, where that's based around land connection and based around really a kind of an anti-capitalist radical space for queer people, but in rural Ireland. And we kind of what we do really is we kind of come together and we start everything by eating food together, chatting about what we want, what we'd love to learn, and what we'd love to share. And often people think that they don't really have anything to share. I know, when we run these workshops, we're like, what would you like to share? And people are like, oh God, I wouldn't really have anything that I can share. And then we ask people what they love to do. And they're like, well, I've a little kitchen garden and I do a bit of planting. I do a bit of, making jam and different types of things. And usually when you ask people what they love, that's the things that they end up sharing. The type of program that we've been doing in our local group in Clare, we've done organic growing, herbalism, carpentry, kind of street medic and community first aid, um, everything that we do in terms of what we're looking at. So, we look at food systems. We have a brilliant person who's really heavily involved called Savage Crack, and they're a master fermenter, and they kind of talk about the history of the world and food production through their fermentation practices. We've also looked at seed saving and the effects of globalization and how seeds travel around the world, and how that the colonial practices of people moving around the world has such huge impact on our seed saving and our food production. So we're looking at kind of land-based connection, and what are those impacts. And then we also do more kind of cultural workshops, so Irish language sessions, people connecting with the language, and therefore a greater connection to the land. Looking at things like sound and field recordings. We've done cultural resistance workshops with a local Palestinian artist. So those are the types of things that we do, but every group doesn't have to replicate that, but it's where we kind of started off. Um, so that was a kind of a trial that we did, or a pilot that we did for the first year in 2024. And then we got a little bit of funding to look out and say, okay, we had loads of interest from people. We just set it up, and there was people from all over the country saying, look, we'd love to set up our own queer shed. And then we got a little bit of funding to run a kind of a co-design workshop. So we did that. Well, this is our kind of usual co-designs, but our co-design workshop, we brought people together from all over the country. I think we brought 10 groups that applied, that they said they wanted to set up a queer sheds. And we just did a kind of a visioning 2 days with people. And we said, what doesn't this type of network look like for you? What types of things do people need if there's a kind of a network of people from all over the country working on this? And people were interested in non-hierarchical organizing, skills that can be shared from people all over the country, creating systems where anybody can access what we're doing. I guess different types of looking at how we can organize that people can be sustained with this type of work as well. So different types of looking at how we can, how we could pay people for the work that they're doing while making it accessible. So those are all the types of questions that we had, and we talked about what we would want the network to be going forward. But I can just, before we kind of go a little further into it, I can talk about the types of things that we did. So we've done like our co-design, visioning, and potluck dinners. We usually go out, have a walk on the land, and chat about what people would like to learn. We've done things like building with clay. That's the most brutal looking clay oven that has ever been made. That is thanks to me. We've done fermentation, organic growing and seed saving, uh, like tote bag making, anything that people are really interested in. And then I can kind of talk about the wider network. So the network for us is, we kind of plan to develop it. There's people from nearly every county in Ireland, cross border, who are interested in setting up queer sheds. There's about 12 active now in Ireland, but there's over 30 something people that applied to us through an open call that we did. So we've got groups from Belfast, up in the north of Ireland, all the way down to West Cork, really rural Ireland. So cities to the most rural spaces. And our aim is to kind of engage 28 groups in the next 3 years. And just kind of look at, yeah, building this into a kind of a national network that remains kind of grassroots, but is supporting people from all over the country. And at the moment, I'm kind of acting as a facilitator for that work. Although the next phase of what we're doing is just kind of kicking off at the moment, so it's going to be another few years until we're kind of at that point. But there's a huge amount of interest in it, and one of the things that when I was thinking about what I would talk about here is the positive impact that it's had on people, queer people in our area. A lot of There's a lot of kind of people that are interested in this type of work, that are interested in land connection, that are interested in traditional skills, that are interested in that relationship with nature, and also um, growing resilient communities. But people felt quite kind of isolated from each other because we're in rural Ireland. Those opportunities for connection weren't necessarily there. And one thing that I've kind of noticed over this last 2 years now is that not only has a kind of a vibrant alternative queer community built up, but there's also a lot of kind of connections between the people in our community that are queer and people outside of that community as well. So we've been doing a little bit of work with, oh yeah, okay. So this is our kind of building up to a wider community. But what I've kind of noticed that is that when you have supported queer communities engaging in their local area, engaging with the land, engaging in learning kind of practical and traditional skills, people are more confident and comfortable in themselves. And then there's connections being made outside of just our own small little ecosystem, and kind of building out into that wider system. So, we've been working with the local men's sheds groups, men in their like men from the local area in their 70s, on building, supporting queer art projects that have been happening up on our land, or planting forest gardens in our local town. So you can see that actually there's wider communities outside of just our queer community that are developing, and in the long term contributing to rural life, or what a richer rural life can look like in Ireland, and hopefully further afield as well. But yeah, that's kind of it in terms of me talking about the work that we do. And I'd love if people had questions. I'd love to chat.
Thank you so much. There's truly just like such a wealth of work that's happening there, and like the connections that's happening there, and the way that this is unfolding. Like just the body of work is the wrong language to give it, but like just the breadth of how that work is unfolding is just astounding. Um,
Yeah, and I think that that's it. I think that a lot, the people that are involved have been doing a lot of work for a long time. This is the kind of presentation of it now. And I guess it's kind of been able to sort of hit the ground running because all of the people that are involved have been doing a lot of this work for a long time. And this is just kind of like, I guess, a kind of a point of fusion where people are coming together. So, and also I think it's a point of need for people. We're in this poly crisis, and things are really difficult for people. And I think people are more isolated than they have ever been, and also more disconnected than they've ever been. People don't have the same access to skills and the types of things that give people autonomy. Even housing. Housing is such a huge issue in Ireland. When people don't have their basic needs met, it's really hard for them to be able to kind of do any, do anything outside of what is just surviving. So there's just a huge need and a huge demand for it. And also, like, the what queer community has changed so much in, the last 40 years. We've gone from being completely, it being a kind of a pariah space to now being accepted with like absolute vodka and like huge like pride parades, and people are like, what is this? This isn't the type of space that I wanted to be in or feel like I connected. So I think it basically is like the conditions are the types of conditions that have been created, I guess, have kind of like laid the ground for people wanting more. And that's why it's kind of why people are so connected to this idea, I think.
Mm.
Yeah, that's so just so inspiring, and like the scale of it, the scope of it, the history of it, everything that's gone in, it's so heartwarming to see this, see all these smiling faces, hear about all of the really meaningful and healthy um reorientations from what is just becoming an increasingly more sort of toxic capitalistic pressure pressure cooker for queer community. So it's
Yeah.
really so inspiring. um and also, and I'm not sure what rural community life is like in general, and rural community development, that it's hard at the best of times. So it's beautiful to see these systems and structures, led by queer communities in these contexts, and I'm really interested to see what happens after, um, more time of these activations in regional communities. It's really beautiful. Um, I have a question around strangely identity. Funny that queer talking. But we've been speaking a lot about permaculture's political, food systems are political, and
Yeah.
how we stray away from dominant power structures and paradigms. And I'm fascinated both because this is from a queer perspective and also situated in Ireland. Such a wealth of cultural identity, and not collapsed into the sort of homogenized whiteness. And so I've got a question around, yeah, there's so many beautiful things that you spoke around what those ancestral ways were and how people connect to them. That's sort of a challenge that we have here in what I'd call the white diaspora, where those pathways are difficult to understand what that ancestral connection to land is. So if you can speak a little bit to how that intersects at Queer Sheds, and how you go about doing that, and also what people's experiences are like when they come and go through that process.
Well, it's really obviously very complicated. All over the world, there's such a connection with cultural identity and kind of nationalism and racism. And in Ireland, uh, we're at a kind of point now where the growth of the far right is not in any way, it's not like the UK, or it's not like Italy. A solid, we do have like a solid history of kind of organizing. And I think it, until very recently, a fairly, we have a lot of problems and we have a lot of complicity in Ireland, but there's also been a lot of kind of openness in engaging with newer communities. But like with the global shift, that's shifting now as well. And we're seeing a huge amount of issues with a lot of people who are coming into Ireland seeking asylum are basically kept in a really archaic direct provision system. And direct provision is like directly providing for people that come in and are seeking asylum, but a lot of people aren't allowed to work. The direct provision that people are provided with is €38 per week to live on, which is absolutely horrific. And now there's huge protests that are happening in these, basically, like, centres where people are earmarked to come and live in it through the direct provision centre. Those centres are being kind of set on fire, and there's protests outside. So it's a shifting space at the moment, and our cultural identity is being used in that space as well. So a lot of there's a huge amount of basically co-opting our uh, traditional kind of practices and skills and music and cultural heritage, and it's being kind of weaponized against new people who are coming into the country. So I think that it's incredibly important actually for us who are in this space to be, first of all, giving people the opportunity to engage with the types of traditions that we have here, and open that space, but also open the space that people who are coming here feel like they can still connect to their own cultural traditions and connections. So that's kind of how we do it. We highlight the our history and our kind of history of colonization and the fact that our language was taken from us. So we're doing um, Irish language workshops, and we're doing traditional music and cultural types of workshops, and looking at our traditional foodways. But also always creating the opportunity for people to share their own connections, share their own skills, talk about what's the cultural heritage and skills that people have from their own communities as well, and looking at the common connections, um, and then giving people an opportunity to share and learn around that. Really, that's so important for us, and even for the queer sheds, but in everything that we do, because I run the heritage program at Common Knowledge, and um, it's such a contested space. So a big part of what we did this year is we've got like a heritage festival that we run for 3 days, where people come and they share um mostly traditional skills, so like basket weaving, just regular weaving, hide tanning, scything, all of these skills. But we also have performances by people who are, we had a kind of a multicultural band playing Irish traditional music and Nigerian music and Ukrainian music. And we were just doing a kind of a photo project of skill sharers from Ireland and people who've just come into the country. So people feel like they can connect with their own culture and bring it to Ireland, but also center people as part of our movement as well, in a way that people feel like can represent them, but they feel like they can take on a new identity in Ireland as well. So it's a big part of the work because it's a huge problem here in Ireland.
Thank you. That's really, really fascinating and nuanced. So thank you for diving into that complexity. I'm Toad, you came with me.
I did. And it's the end of a very long day, so I had a question that came in one ear and out the other. But I guess I'll follow a brief train of thought and say that it's really joyful to see other third spaces that aren't centered around sex and alcohol. Like these are sacred things to our queer community, but also like the harm that exists when those are the only spaces that are the third spaces, the meeting spaces.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about your kind of thoughts about that.
Yeah. Well, I guess, we know that we have these spaces. We have the party spaces. We have when we are kind of thinking about the why this space is needed. We have our party space, we have our space for protest, although this is kind of a protest space as well, but it's in a different way. We have our protest spaces, and we wanted to kind of extend that a little more. And I think it's important to create spaces that aren't focused on those things, because it gives people an opportunity to engage in a different way. I think there's a depth that comes, well, we know it's proven, there's a depth that comes and a connection that comes when people are in an environment where they're learning and they're doing something practical with their hands. It gives them an opportunity to actually open up and talk about things in a different way than, say, your pub. or your club or whatever. And I love those spaces. And we do, we've got a festival here and it's a skill sharing festival for 3 days. And we primarily focus on the skills, but then we also have performances and gigs, and there is booze at it. And, we're not completely against those spaces. We think that they're really important, but it's not our priority. It's our priority to create safe spaces for people. And we also know that um, those spaces have complicated histories for people, and I think creating a space where someone who is not drinking or who are choosing to often step out of that kind of party space, we're not against them, and we want to support people. We're for harm reduction, but we want to create the spaces that people can come into, no matter what their life experience has been, because those spaces can be very inaccessible for people, especially people who have different needs. Like pubs are so loud; it's really hard to kind of talk. So even just on a really practical basis, creating spaces that maybe can accommodate a multitude of people's needs is another reason that we're doing this.
Thank you. That's so beautiful to hear. And it's just speaking to some wisdom that was shared to us by a mentor of ours, Stamy, who's an incredible Tongan woman. She spoke about often the most difficult task in her village was shelling peas, because it was when you're shelling peas that you were then talking with the others and the big conversations that
Yeah,
were coming out.
yeah,
And just like, the beauty of being able to like design spaces that allow for that experience.
yeah. 100%. There's a guy, an artist called William Bach, and he has a practice of weaving like a green rope. So we did a workshop where it kind of happened over the course of a weekend. I'd say about 50 or 60 people contributed to this green rope making, and just drinking tea and making this rope. And at the end of it, there was this beautiful, like, I don't know, maybe it was like 30 or 40 meter rope. We have it up on our wall now. It's beautiful, but you could see the richness of the conversations that were coming from people, because also, you know, sometimes it's difficult to just rock up to a space with a load of people that you don't know and then just have to start chatting. Um, so giving people the opportunity to kind of break down those social um awkwardnesses, or like the kind of discomfort that comes from entering new spaces, uh is yeah, it's great to create those spaces.
Well, awesome. I'm really reveling in the quality of smiles in this photo here in the eyes.
Oh yeah.
Um, I have a question. Our opening speaker today, Tammy Jonas from Australian Food Sovereignty Alliance, was about um, Livia Campesina, Sina, and the challenges here of coordinating together across the challenges in the food system and the cultural issues and that are involved as well right
Yeah.
now in the world. And I'm really interested in you know uh, Tammy said, what is our political formation process, and how do we find form, and with this look for that view towards a nationwide network. I'm just interested in how your what is the social structure of how you go out to connect to these communities, and how they stay engaged, and if you speak to a little bit about how people flow through this amazing project.
Yeah, so I can kind of talk about the the steps for the kind of more nationalized element of it. We put a call out on social media, and we just, from the first project I did here, I contacted basically like every old school organizing. We Social media is really great for us, but you don't get everybody. So I emailed and called like community organizations all over the country, queer organizations all over the country, and did like poster runs. Just because I think that old school communications are like one of the best ways that you can do these things. We do rely on social media because it's such an easy way to connect with people, but it's got so many issues, not only because of the platforms that they're run on, but because of the limited category of people that you'll get through engaging with social media. So I think old school, like boots on the ground, connecting with people, making phone calls, saying, "Do you have people that might be interested in this?" And that was a kind of the way that we got people engaged in that first 25 people who came down onto site. Honestly, they kind of became a little bit of a basis for all of the people that we've since connected with. Like the people that we connected with in 2022, we're doing, have now, three of those people are some of the people who set up some of the career sheds around the country. Um, and then I have also been doing kind of workshops for us down at Common Knowledge. So it's just kind of an ecosystem that's developed. And then in terms of the actual structural element of it, the plan is that our kind of local group, we're going to set up like an organization so we can apply for funding. Other groups have already done that. Some groups are going to go down that kind of cooperative model, membership model. That seems like what we might do, that there's a membership fee that people pay, and it can be like zero up to 20 quid or something a month. So then we can cover the cost of paying facilitators to come and do the workshops, but it's always free for people that need to be able to access it. That's one of the most important things. But then there are people who have money, who are interested in supporting things that they're really interested in. So we're doing sliding scales. That's the aim. And then in terms of a national network, it's a little bit more complicated. So the aim is that we'll have working groups based around different categories. So like a people working group, skill sharing working group. And then our aim is that we'll be running our website, and each group from around the country will have its own page on the website, and they can promote their own stuff. They can talk about what they're doing, and basically like a blog for what they want to do. And that we'll run a kind of a central um hive from here in Clare, and that each group will have their own space or digital space. That there's nobody has a solid space yet, and they'll come and we'll do monthly meetings for people to check in, talk about how they're doing. But there's kind of like, yeah, a steering committee of members from each group. So the direction of the network is always kind of guided by the decisions of the people who are on the ground in each group. You
Oh,
know, kind of like a union, kind of like an old school kind of union format, I guess.
mm. Yeah, that's awesome. We're really fascinated, obviously in localized food systems, resource share, mutual aid, like how different models of structuring and what works and what doesn't work. So I'm really interested in and grateful that we're connected now through this to see how that develops and changes over time, and
Yeah,
look
let's
forward to
see.
us.
Let's see. You'll come back in a year
Yeah,
to see.
absolutely. I'm Toad. You came off mute.
I did. I had a question. And it's not a necessarily like an easy question. I know that organizing around queer community in rural spaces in our context, um, like there's the reality that often queers in marginalized spaces in rural areas, there is like higher levels of substance use and things like that. Sometimes very harmful substances like meth
Hmm.
and puff and play spaces are quite large in rural areas.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of the reality of like people think that organizing in or even in queer communities, but rural queer spaces is just bubbles and sunshines and pride parades. But like, I'm curious as to how you navigate from like a harm minimize. I heard you say harm minimization before. Like, how do you navigate the very real aspect of organizing with queer, often marginalized, often traumatized people trying to create uh, like regenerative ways of being?
Well, I'm just gonna like a rural context here is so different to a rural context there. We have such small communities. Like those, I guess the issues that you were kind of addressing are far more prevalent in the cities. Um, because our rural spaces are just, there's a few thousand people or a few hundred people in our kind of townlands, and the queer community is just a few hundred people where we are, and the queer people that are interested in these kind of queer regenerative spaces it's also so much smaller. And to be honest, it's not an issue in the same way. If you were speaking to someone who's organising in Dublin, or it'd be a different question. But honest to God, a lot of people who've moved out of the city and are living in rural queer spaces, a lot of people have kind of are already on a journey for organising a different type of space and are kind of longing for a connection post uh, a different time in their lives. So honest, we really are not having those issues. But I've organised in queer spaces in cities before, and we have had those kind of situations, and but it's not really an issue
Mm.
at the moment.
Thank you.
But that's specifically related to kind of like people engaging with substances or harm minimization. Obviously, there's different types of there's different issues with people. There's a huge amount of people that are still closeted. There's in terms of identity, um, like engaging with your identity as a non-binary person or a trans person, like it is really difficult for people. There's not a huge amount of acceptance because there's not a huge amount of awareness, I think, from people. And because a lot of people who are queer in rural Ireland, they leave because they want to move towards bigger urban centres. So although there's a certain level of acceptance of queerness in rural Ireland, there is not a huge amount of kind of understanding for diverse identities, and that can be quite difficult for people, and it is really difficult for trans people living in rural Ireland.
Thank you for clarifying that as well. Because the only context I have around organizing is this context,
Yeah,
having lived here. That's
yeah,
really, yeah, thank you really for cluing me into that.
yeah, and that's not to say that people don't have issues or aren't experiencing that, but as part of organising in this specific community, it's so small. And the type of community is really different. So the kind of issues that we have are quite different. And isolation would be one of the biggest things for us.
Um, Thank you. The theme for today's part of the narrative is on our parasitic mushrooms
Yeah.
enduring power, and how we divest and move away from. And obviously it's a different context over there. But can you speak more to what that divestment looks like and how it's obviously it's very evident in what it is that you're creating, but obviously we're coming from this context as well. So if
Hmm.
you paint a picture a bit more of how that looks in that context and yeah, and that storytelling.
Well, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because for us to get started, we got funding to be able to kind of kick it off. So I guess in a super practical level, the divestment from that is like the importance of creating sustainable communities so that no matter what happens in terms of our like the political context of where we're situated, things are changing. Like in Ireland, we have um there's lots of money currently for the queer community, but you can in terms of like funding and acceptance and you know uh, the Irish state has prided itself on being um marriage equality and kind of a safe space for queer people. But in reality, we have huge levels of homelessness for queer people. There's the access to trans healthcare is brutal here. So what, like all states, what's being said and communicated is so different to what's actually being practiced. And I think that we're trying to create new systems of support and care that can be resilient, regardless of whether or not people can access a little bit of local funding from there. But although, people are doing that, which is brilliant, that like it's there and the ability to be able to kickstart things that are there. But I think we just want to look at creating models that work, that is completely community supported and self-sufficient in a way that's not individualist, but self-sufficient for communities to be able to support the people that are in it with like various levels and degrees of care. So divestment for me in this context is looking at creating sustainable communities outside of additional support. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. That whole sovereignty piece of community owned, run, and coordinated. It's really inspiring. Thank you, Aoife. It's really beautiful to hear. Um, I had another thought that just fell out of my head, so I'm going to pass to you, Toad.
You
Pick that.
have had a long day.
Thank you.
It's quarter to 10 a.m. for me. So
Wow.
I'm raring to go.
No, it's so good. You're bringing the energy that we started it strong. Now we're no, it's really appreciated. I was going to ask a question as well of what advice would you have or a recipe or any way that you want to story it of someone who's wanting to start or co-create or lead or kind of start a queer shed in their context.
Yeah, I think just if you can gather like two people together, but even if you don't have anybody, put a note in the local shop or on social media to say, there was a bunch of people who got in touch with us who said like I don't have anyone to start this with, and we said, oh, we know another person from Waterford that's interested in doing this. We'll link you up. And the first thing to do is just have a potluck, get people to come and chat. It's super simple, especially in kind of activist spaces where we love meetings and coming together and planning things in this way where it's just gung ho. But we want to create a space where people can chill out and rest and get that kind of the need from community connection. So we start with dinner, bring anything, and then kind of go from there. And also try and have that as a basis for what you do going forward. Don't just organize all the time. The skill sharing is brilliant, the chatting is brilliant, but like create spaces for like rich social interaction as well. And food is always such a good way to connect because there's such a story behind why people choose to cook what they cook, or what we usually go out and get. We usually harvest from the garden before we do a potluck, and people can come along and learn that as well. So I think the first thing to do is just create a space where you can have a potluck, and then we always just do things you'd like to share, things you'd like to learn with people. That's the first step.
I remembered my point. Oh, sorry. Do you want to respond to that, Toad?
No, I really think, yeah, highlighting the importance of a shared meal and how, like shelling peas, it's a practice that can let people begin to talk about the things when they have something to do. Um, and I often find it a really fantastic way to kind of disarm often people who are from a very activist background. We're like, all right, we're going to do X, Y, da, da, da. Uh, whereas the talking to be the second point and the food to be the first point. I
Yeah.
just really want to mirror how I really hear you there.
Yeah, and I think like we've been doing it for maybe we've been kind of doing it for nearly 2 years now, and I am like that. This is directed at me as well because even when I go to events that I'm not putting on or organizing, I'm like, give me a job. I need a job. I need something to do, because I'm just like sometimes I don't even know where I am if I don't be having things to do. And actually, just having these dinners has forced me to just sit down and chill out and chat with people. And actually, you like the richness of the relationships are really starting to develop now. And I think that it's really important for people that are used to go, 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 me really included.
I call myself out with that one as well.
Yeah.
Uh, Brilliant. I remember my question, and it's around how do you hold um, a boundary around what the regenerative culture is in this space, talking about, divesting from those other ways of being. Do you have a set of values? Is it just vibes? Is there like how have you created a container to protect that sort of regenerative ethic, and what does that look like in practice for you?
I don't think that we're there in practice. I think it's this is the thing that I find with most people that are organizing, that everyone is just completely burned out. Um, and I think that that is the work to do. You know, I love I don't do this. I am always just really busy and doing a lot, and the I'm trying to kind of step back from that. But I think really creating spaces where people feel like they have the opportunity to be responsible for things is important. Not having, not feeling like you're the sole person of that's organizing. I think that's really important in a space. When especially being involved in activist spaces for so long, we feel like there's a huge amount of pressure. And I think that that's the biggest piece of work to do. So that the people who are always kind of hands on the wheel feel like they can step back, and the people who often don't feel like they can take a lot of responsibility, creating spaces that those people can come forward and can create more of an equilibrium. But um I'm definitely working towards that. I think we definitely have to work towards that within our own, even within our own kind of group, stepping back a little bit and giving people the opportunities to step forward with the things that they'd like to do. Um, in terms of just practical organizing, I worked in a community and food cooperative for 13 years. And I love the like I think a workers' cooperative is a really brilliant basis for organizing. And I think working cooperatives with rotational roles are really good. I think that that can really help avoid burnout. I don't mean throwing like every week doing something new, but I think people rotating every 6 months or something like that can really make a big difference for empowering people to step into roles and also relieving people of responsibilities. So that from just like a learned or lived experience type of ways of organizing, I think that co-op organizing is really powerful and can be really good.
Yeah, thank you for sharing and really grounding that reality. Sometimes it's like, oh, what is the context over there? And it's like, yeah, we're burnt out. We're burnt
Yeah.
out. It's hard work, very humanizing and very much um, the reality of this work. So yeah, I appreciate that your ongoing transparency and honesty and generosity in sharing, all of the learnings that you've made um, throughout, and I look forward to what the new ones are moving forward and co-conspiring. We've had a few responses of thanks and adoration in the chat. Not a question, just want to say thank you from Raphael. This is incredible from Alex. Thanks, Aoife. This is super lovely from Manu. And Karen says, thank you so much, kind. Oh, that's actually for us. And I'm not going to
Lovely.
attempt to speak that because I will butcher your language. So I'm not going to do that.
It just Gur Mahagut. It's thank you.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yeah.
Um, I'm wondering if there are any other questions from the crowd, and I'll pass to you too.
I'm just letting those questions filter in. But kind of very much echoing what Guy has said. Thank you for kind of really helping us reorient into your context and the way that you're doing this work, which is deeply queer. For queer as in plus LGBT plus people, queer in the ways in which it is finding connections between, like you said, like the queer community and the men shed, which, historically never the twain shall meet in
No.
many spaces. Um, and that's really kind of what's for us at Permaqueer really inspiring, because
Mm,
what we want to see within the permaculture movement and within the queer spaces, because a lot of our audiences are people who are embedded in permaculture or ag spaces,
yeah.
and they want to know more about the social stuff, or they're in the queer spaces or a lot of the activist spaces, but
Yeah.
often very disconnected from the land-based stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so for us to see the way that you're modeling this, like, is really so deeply inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks a million. And yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's really great to chat to you, and I can't wait to kind of chat more. Um, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Very, very
Actually,
keen on the future.
I have one more question.
yeah,
So we actually have been asking this to everybody. It was a prompt from our first speaker, Jessica Hutchings,
yeah,
who's an incredible Māori practitioner, Hua Parakore, and it comes from the leadership of Moana Jackson, a thought leader in Te Ao Māori,
yeah,
that we have to act as if blank, and that's how we approach, and it's no small feat what you're doing, and it's really incredible. And so I want to hear, how do you act as if, and what does that look like in your context?
Wow, okay. What do we have to act as if? Well, you really kind of have to imagine the world that you want to live in, don't you? So I guess uh, in relation to this, and probably why this has taken off so much is we are imagining as if this, I guess, with the queer sheds, this project already exists, and these people are already existing, and it's just a matter of creating those kind of opportunities. So I guess we're, I'm imagining as if we have a world where people are connecting with the land and they're connecting with the people around them, and it's not um, necessarily guided simply by the fact that we're queer, but it's supported by that. And that enables our kind of connections to a wider community, and it kind of creates a softness with the wider community as well. And I guess that's what I'm imagining, that we're improving the quality of our lives and other people's lives based around the experiences that we've had.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I keep on getting trapped in the joy of these smiles on the image. Yeah. And that's, I see that imagination, I see that dream, and I see that reality, and I look forward to what was it that Lasha said, co-resisting in this dream together to
Yeah,
make that. Yeah.
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Well, we're nearing up our 7 o'clock, so if everyone wants to flood the Q&A now with love and adoration for Aoife, and take a look, a follow, like, subscribe, support, donate if you want to support the amazing work that they're doing across socials. Are there any other ways that people can get in contact with you? Awesome.
Well, like, yeah, you can just leave. Well, the super handy thing is just hello@queersheds.org. People can just email me. But we have like website, we have social media, um, and yeah,
Amazing. Thank
yeah.
you,
Thank
Aoife
you.
from Tamara. Thank you from Talapamai. Oh, gorgeous.
And well done, yous, for organizing such an amazing few days of uh conversation and action. Yeah.
Honestly, I feel so privileged to be able to actually ask all the questions. Like it feels like I hope that the people watching are enjoying the questions, and if you're not, chuck in a different one. But it is such a privilege to be able to, you know, feel the threads of this narrative and participate in it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Cool.
And Guy's been singing Waiata to a lot of people to give thanks. And a challenge has been to kind of offer song, and a song that was shared to me by a friend who learned it from an Appalachian friend about Bridget, which I feel like is a very like
Oh
a
yeah.
queer friend. I
Yeah.
feel like is a very just one of the ways I'd like to express my gratitude.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is. Oh, how sweet is that golden nectar, that sacred honey from the comb, from the hive that's in the valley where our Bridget makes her home. Come now, Bridget, come we call you, may we in your sweetness dwell. So, a very
Gorgeous.
southern Bridget to you. Thank you so much for everything you've given us today.
Oh, thank you. That was beautiful. Thanks a million.
Thank you. We are wrapping up a giant day of a massive day of incredible people who've been so generous with us. Um, I'm pleasantly overwhelmed, I guess is what I'll say, with emotions and gratitude for the people who've spoken today and offered really incredible offerings to this space.
And also the biggest thanks as well to all of the attendees that come along as well. This wouldn't be happening if you didn't come along to witness it. And also grounding this in our solidarity, respect and care and resistance for the many Palestinians in Gaza right now and this fundraiser towards them, and also towards the First Nations causes this is for. So thank you all for coming, for learning, for asking questions, and we hope to see you again tomorrow morning for day 3, and then we will go into hibernation because that's what's going to happen. But have a lovely night, everyone. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, everyone.